Well, the New Orleans Saints, for the fifth straight season, lose their season opener, and now 0-1 on the season, falling this afternoon at the Mercedes-Benz Superdome to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers by the final count of 48-40. Hi again, everybody. I'm Sean Kelly. Welcome into our Saints postgame show live from our studios at the Astor Sports Performance Center. We'll be taking you back to the Mercedes-Benz Superdome for plenty of postgame comment here shortly. We'll hear from Saints head coach Sean Payton, Saints quarterback Drew Brees, our own analyst and lead writer John DeShazier today, sprinkling of the highlights, and of course a touch on the festivities at halftime today as Tom Benson was placed amongst those in the Ring of Honor. So 48-40 the final score. Right to the podium, here's head coach Sean Payton.
First off, credit Tampa. Thought those guys did a good job. They came in here, obviously made a number of big plays. I felt like there were a couple key elements that made it difficult and things that we didn't do well. Number one, third down, the numbers weren't good again. They weren't last year when we lost to them in Tampa. Obviously, the two turnovers that we had, no takeaways on the other side. So, look, we've got to that's not the type of game that suits us, and that's the type of game we played in years past when we've been a 500 team. So, got a lot of work to do, a lot of things to correct. Way too many mistakes. Thought we struggled with the explosives that they had, and we got to get it cleaned up. So obviously, it starts with me and our staff. We didn't do a good enough job, but we'll get a look at the tape tomorrow and start on next week. Any questions? Take your pick. Take your pick. We didn't hurry the passer. Guys were open. Third downs were awful. They'd have over 500 yards. So we didn't disrupt the timing of any element to the passing game. And too many penalties. I can't think of many positives. So. Yeah, listen, that's not the frustration right now. You know, it's not going to be a perfect game. No, that's true, and you just saw it happen. So there's no buts after that. There's no you have to come ready to play in this league, period. And you know, I give credit to Tampa. Listen, the quarterback played exceptionally well for him. I thought the offensive line played well. I don't know how many times he was able to, on a third down, get out of the pocket, even that last drive. So, go ahead. I'm sorry. Nothing about last year carries over to this year. I've said it a million times. There's not a single thing that carries over this year.
So, was some of that defensive stuff of disorganization, communication?
No, listen, there were guys playing their technique. At times, the technique was poor. We got beat at the line of scrimmage. They've got some talented players, but no, I wouldn't equate it to that. I thought, first off, I thought the quarterback, for the most part, was pressure-free. And that's going to be tough. And if he's pressure-free, then the receivers are running through the defense. That makes it doubly tough. So somewhere you got to disrupt the timing of the passing game. Excuse me? Listen, just you get a good quarterback in this league time to throw. You get talented receivers just like they had, and we saw it, you know. So that's not a good combination. Shoot, I'm trying to think of the time of possession. It seemed like it went by pretty quick. Obviously, we'll take a peek at the tape. I mean, we had one series, it was a run, then it was a screen, then it was a third down, we punted. I'd have to go back and look at it to be specific. I mean, you know, you want to avoid a game that becomes one in which you're calling it like you have to score each series, and that becomes difficult. But sometimes if you're in those games, then that's what you have to do. So, we didn't score enough. Yeah, listen, he played well. It's tough, difficult, especially, that last one.
Sean, did you see any signs this summer that made you think that the defensive, fast defense wasn't coming together?
No. Listen, like I said, but it's not like we're taking last year's group and numbers and, those guys came, Tampa Bay came ready and it put it to us. It put it to us good.
Coach, they're professionals and everything, but is it hard to insulate them from being a 10-point favorite and all the talk about how they're supposed to win big?
No, listen, I think that that's part of being a professional and understanding. We still have to focus on the job we have to do, and when we're playing good teams, it's different than college football. This is each week a battle. We know that.
Coach, did they catch you off guard with Ryan Fitzpatrick when he started to run a lot more?
No, he's done that pretty much most of his career. He's been a pretty effective climb and get a first down, flush. Not exceptionally fast, but someone who's willing to especially when he sees certain coverages. We've got to do a better job of, keeping the contain in the pocket and not giving him those opportunities like he had. But that's been something he's done his whole career, pretty effectively. Look, all of it. I mean, you can point to one thing. We didn't play well enough to win that game, and try to get back in it, give ourselves a chance to win it, but we certainly didn't play well enough, and they did. I don't want to take anything away from how they played. I thought they played awfully well.
I know you said last year, kind of say, right into shit after the first
Yeah. Listen, 2/3 of the group gets it, and the other third of the group. I mean, look, I'm focused on this year's team, and that's happened before. We've had years where, we fell down and bounced back. It's week one. Obviously, we have to improve in a lot of the things we're looking at, and we got to look closely as coaches as to what we're asking them to do, and are we asking the right guys to do it? It's not the same lineup. It's not the same lineup, and it doesn't mean because there are certain players that were in that position a year ago, but obviously it was a disappointing loss. All right, thanks.
All right, Saints head coach Sean Payton following the 48-40 loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The Saints now 0-1. Coach touched on basically the gist of the football game. John DeShazier and I will go into more detail about some of those numbers, key plays, and moments throughout the game. In fact, John DeShazier will join us here momentarily from the press conference room at the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. Ryan Fitzpatrick was unbelievable today. Career day for him. He not only ran for 36 yards and a touchdown, he passed for 4 more and ended up going 21 of 28 for 417 yards and a quarterback rating of 156.2. Drew Brees in the same duel. He still went 37 of 45, 439 yards, 3 touchdowns, his quarterback rating at 129.5. Brees also made history today with his first touchdown pass. That was at that moment 35 touchdown passes thrown by Brees in a season opener. That passes Peyton Manning is now the high water mark in NFL history. Mike Thomas eclipsed 200 catches today. There's a lot of notes going on here, but the bottom line is this. As Coach had mentioned, Tampa Bay 8 of 13 on third down, including a huge conversion right before the 2-minute warning, and that secured the win for Tampa Bay. New Orleans was 4 of 9, by the way, on third down. And total offense, as Coach Payton mentioned, up over 500 yards today for the Buccaneers. 529 yards total offense to New Orleans, 475. At one point back in the first half, the Buccaneers were averaging over 15 yards a play. In fact, at the end of one quarter, they had run 10 plays, averaging 14.3 yards per play as they got out of the gate hot. And they only punted 1 time today. Keep that in mind, too. And their 48 points scored also ties a franchise record for points in a regular season game. I think John DeShazier's all set to go for his first thoughts, especially those coming right after head coach Sean Payton. So let's take you back to the Mercedes-Benz Superdome and our own John DeShazier with his opening post-game thoughts. John?
Well, I don't know what else to add after Coach Payton. I mean, I think he succinctly summarized the whole thing. When you're talking about a disappointing loss, it's more than that. I mean, it's the way it came about to see the Saints not function defensively. Now, offensively, obviously, a lot of good things happened in that game. Drew Brees, fantastic for this team offensively, and Michael Thomas and Alvin Kamara. So we saw some wonderful things offensively out of a unit that didn't play together a whole lot in the preseason. But defensively, which is a unit where we thought this team might be improved, especially at the cornerback position after last year in the pass rush, all of those places faltered. When you allow 41 points, remember, yes, Tampa Bay scored 48, but one of those was a scoop and score, so they scored 41 on offense. But, you can't think of many times where the Saints got a decent push defensively in terms of getting to Ryan Fitzpatrick at quarterback, or where they were able to cover efficiently against Mike Evans or Deshaun Jackson. And those are the kinds of things that we didn't think we would see from this defense, especially not to this degree. Tampa's a pretty good offense. Mike Evans is a really good receiver. Deshaun Jackson is a really good receiver. And just because Ryan Fitzpatrick was not the starter doesn't mean he has not started in the NFL. He started more than 100 games, as a matter of fact, as a 14-year vet. But the way he picked apart the Saints, part and parcel because they couldn't get any rhythm getting to him with a defensive line pressure. So now you got to bring the blitz. And if you can't get to him that way, then you have your corners out there on an island, and they just weren't functioning at a high level here. So, obviously a disappointing way to come out in that first game when you have so much enthusiasm in the offseason, and you feel like you have so much enthusiasm going into the season. You feel like you have a nice balance of youth and veteran in this team and a lot of talent on this team. And to come out this way, obviously very, very disappointing to allow more than 500 yards and, again, 41 points on offense and 48 total. And then, again, see some of the same deficiencies crop up, unable to get off the field defensively on third down. Those are things that will hurt a team. I don't care if it's week 1 or week 17 of the NFL season. Those are things that come back to bite you eventually, and they bit the Saints all up and down here in this game. The good thing is it's game 1. So you hope that the Saints can make the necessary corrections before Cleveland comes in here next week. But obviously, again, you want to start fast. The Saints did, and they lose the season opener again. And these are a lot of deficiencies that probably have to be corrected. Now, is it as bad as it looked? I would imagine it might be a little bit less, because I would imagine that a lot of things that happened today, you saw some communication issues in the secondary, which should not be happening with this team. But those are the things that I think a coaching staff looks at and says, okay, we can clean those up. But, man, there's got to be a lot of cleaning to be done, and it's got to be done in a hurry, because Cleveland will come in here with a couple of talented receivers, as we saw today. They've got Jarvis Landry. They've got Josh Gordon. They've got 2 guys who are really, really good receivers. And so the Saints are going to have their hands full at cornerback again in that secondary, trying to cover those receivers. So we'll see what happens with that. But, again, hopefully the Saints can make those corrections, because there are many to be made. Offensively, again, we saw a really sharp outing from Drew Brees and his guys on offense, but you've got to be better defensively than that in this league. You can't win in shootouts, and you heard Coach Payton allude to it when they've played these kinds of games in the past has been when they've been a 500 team. So certainly they're trying to get away from that, obviously, especially after last season. A slow start to begin this season. Hopefully the corrections can be made. We'll see as it progresses throughout the week, because obviously we don't see a lot of what happens in practice. We won't really know how effective they've been in terms of correcting those issues until we get them back out here next Sunday in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. And hopefully, Kel, we'll see a totally different result.
Yeah, John, I'm with you. Hopefully a different result as well. Your opponent next week, by the way, is Cleveland, and they are in overtime now with the Steelers. It's 21-21. That was a 21-7 game, and the Browns and the Steelers now tied at 21 with 4:57 to go in overtime. We'll track that. The Browns will be here next Sunday. Still to come, Saints quarterback Drew Brees at the podium at the Mercedes-Benz Superdome, and a little bit more from John, probably about more what Brees says than anything else. We'll go through all the numbers individually here. I will say this, there were 52 combined first downs today in this 88-point shootout between the Saints and the Buccaneers. We have the ability to show you a couple of the highlights from today's game. The list would be so long we could be here for an hour running highlights, but let's take a look and listen to a couple of the bigger plays from today's game.
At the bottom to take the snap, handoff straight ahead, and a touchdown Saints, Alvin Kamara. A little bit of a distraction on the Buccaneer defense, and whatever it was that Sean Payton called, Kamara punches it in. Breeze on 3rd and 1. Ends a wide open touchdown Saints. It's Michael Thomas. From the 28 of the Bucs on 1st down. Breeze for Ted Ginn. He's got it. Saints have a touchdown. "28 yards. And he was working on Carlton Davis.
On those highlights, of course, in no particular order, Alvin Kamara, one of his 2 touchdowns today. We also saw the touchdown from Ted Ginn back in the first half. Michael Thomas with a touchdown today. And Alvin Kamara actually finished with 3 touchdowns, 2 rushing, 1 receiving here in the Saints' loss by 8 points to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Another highlight today certainly was found at halftime at the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. It was announced this past week that the departed owner of the New Orleans Saints, Tom Benson, would be honored, and rightfully so, into the Ring of Honor at the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. That took place at halftime today. Mrs. Benson was on hand, obviously, for the unveiling of Tom Benson's name atop the Superdome. Amongst those already honored, including, of course, Archie Manning, Mrs. Benson joined by Mickey Loomis, the Saints Vice President and General Manager, and also Dennis Lauscha. The tribute video was played, highlighting some of those fantastic moments since Mr. Benson took over this team in 1985, passing away on March 15th earlier this year. Tom Benson now is immortalized, again, rightfully so, in that Ring of Honor at the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. Everybody stayed in their seats for the halftime. They knew it was coming today, and certainly it was a special moment, and one that I'm not so sure any of us all that expected here in week 1, but certainly here was the big moment as they pulled away the veil and revealed Tom Benson's name now amongst the greats. As I mentioned, Archie Manning up there, of course, the other Hall of Famers, Morton Anderson included in that. And so Ricky Jackson, of course, there it is. And it's, if you're looking basically from the Saints sideline, Mr. Benson's name now resides just left of the 50-yard line in that Ring of Honor. If you'll be heading to the Mercedes-Benz Superdome this year, you'll want to see that. Another thing that certainly you'll want to stop by and see that was also unveiled today in honoring Mr. Benson and his legacy of work was the new corner office specialty cocktails and tavern lounge at the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. The Saints basically took Mr. Benson's corner office at 5800 Airline Drive and picked it up piece by piece and put it all back together just as we had seen it here down the hall from us for so long, and redid the old Pantheon Cafe basically. And there you have a look at what that corner office now looks like as it resides in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. So that corner office that so many of us were welcome in, and were basically the residents of Mr. Benson almost every workday of the year, is now there, of course, at the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. It's also now a place to gather, reminisce, see something very special, and of course enjoy a specialty cocktail or two, or a food item that is, of course, all centered around this new corner office exhibit at the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. Let's check in on those Steelers and Browns. Now 2:27 left in overtime, still tied at 21. All these other scores are now finals across the NFL today. Cincinnati beats the Colts 34-23 despite a big day from Andrew Luck. Minnesota takes down San Francisco. That ball game in Minneapolis, the final there was 24-16. New England hangs on, beats the Texans. Of course, the Texans with Deshaun Watson back from injury, J.J. Watt back from injury, but it's the Patriots winning in the end, 27-20. Jacksonville beat the Giants by the count of 20-15. More numbers coming up in just a moment. We're awaiting the arrival of Saints quarterback Drew Brees at the podium in the press conference room, and there is the Saints quarterback. We'll send you back downtown. Here is Drew.
Yeah. No, I mean, listen, the loss is disappointing. Obviously, there's some things out there on both sides of the ball that I know we all feel like we can improve upon and get better at, and obviously the difference between winning and losing, you know. I think there were some unfortunate penalties today that, you know, stopped drives for us offensively, you know, continued drives for our defense, you know, their offense. And so, you know, when you look at obviously the final score and you begin to go back and see the impact of some of those, you know, those are significant. You know, those make a difference in winning and losing. And so I think we need to get better in some areas and just understand that, you know, if we want to put ourselves in the best position to win, you know, we've got to fix these things.
Was there extra pressure when, I guess, when the offense has to flip the switch and say, okay, now we almost have to score in every possession because it's that kind of game?
No, listen, it really does not change our mentality at all. You know, we still go out there with the same intent, and that is great execution, you know, great poise, you know, tempo, you know, mixing the run and the pass. We expect to score on every drive. I mean, that's so there's no, you know, regardless of what's happening on the other side of the ball, we are always focused on scoring points. And then if we don't, then let's put our defense in the best position with, hey, punting them down deep into their territory and, you know, making that a challenging thing.
How are you surprised? You know, like I said, in the NFL for 13 years, you're not capable quarterback. How impressed were you by Patrick today?
He played lights out. Played lights out. I don't know if he could have played any better. He was really, really good.
The inability to run the football, do you think it messed up the timing of the tempo and the rhythm of the offense and the team as a whole?
No. I mean, listen, we were taking what they were giving us. You know, I mean, it was, you know, a lot of the pass game can be an extension of the run game if you look at it that way. And hey, there's opportunities here. You know, you know, if you're efficient, you're completing balls. You know, you're getting first downs, moving the chains, getting some big plays at the same time, which I felt like we did a lot of that. No, I mean, listen, we understand that we've got some areas we need to improve upon, but, you know, regardless of a lot of things, if you just look at, okay, we gave them a touchdown with a turnover, right? And then we turned the ball over another time when we were in a position to get points. Minimum 3 points, potentially more. But that's a 10-point swing. And so despite all the other stuff, a 10-point swing in this game is a huge deal, right? It wins the game for us. Bottom line. What's that?
What happened to the offense at the beginning of the second half?
Well, we had a penalty. You know, we had a holding penalty to start one drive. We had a negative play on another one. So, you know, got into a couple third and long situations, which, you know, isn't what we're looking to do.
Sean Day doesn't want to talk about what he did last year, but maybe what happened last year at the start of the season is at least a reference point to say.
Absolutely, yes, we can turn it around. You know, we talked a lot about the first game and how important that is, and we want to get off to a winning start. Unfortunately, that was not the case today, but still a lot of football left to be played.
You think it's hard sometimes when you're, you know, 10-point favorite, a lot of people think you're supposed to win the game big. Some guys hear that, or?
I don't think so. I think we've got a really good locker room. I think we have a you know, a poised locker room. You know, guys that aren't going to overreact and yet understand that, man, there's a great sense of urgency to improve from week 1 to week 2.
Did you expect a shootout after the first half, after they put up a lot of points, both on the offensive side?
I mean, listen, you kind of got the feeling that that's the way the game was going. But again, doesn't affect our mentality offensively until you get in a position where, hey, it's the fourth quarter and it was 48-24, and now you gotta score quick, But prior to that, it was just, man, methodical. When we get the ball, let's possess it. Let's move the chains. Let's get points. Let's play complementary football.
Michael Thomas may have had one fumble and was trying to make something happen. It didn't seem like he was open all day long.
Yeah, I mean, we certainly got a lot of opportunities. I think it was 16 catches and 17 targets, right? And the other one, I bet you he'd say he should have had. So, he's fun to throw to, I guess.
All right, Saints quarterback Drew Brees kind of stating the obvious in a lot of cases, always upbeat, a long way to go. It's one game. We get all that. Brees again, outstanding today, 37 of 45, 439 yards, 3 touchdowns, a quarterback rating of 129.5. Any other day, this is a win based on numbers like that. He mentioned Michael Thomas, who set a new franchise record today with 17 catches. He actually set it with his 16th, ends up with 17 targets. The 16 receptions, a new franchise record, 180 yards, and the touchdown. He breaks a 40-year-old record set by Tony Galbraith. He had 14 receptions in a game 40 years ago tomorrow. So that 40-year record goes away today with that. We should note receiving numbers for Mike Evans and Deshaun Jackson today. Mike Evans, 7 catches for the Buccaneers, 147 yards and a touchdown. And for Deshaun Jackson, the veteran, 5 catches, 146 yards, 2 touchdowns, injured late in the game. Early word is that he'll be okay. Tough day, though, obviously, for Marshawn Lattimore in handling Mike Evans. And then Ken Crawley also had some troubles today, too, including a pass interference penalty. All right, let's go back to the Mercedes-Benz Superdome press conference room here in just a moment. John DeShazier is getting wired up. We'll get his last thoughts of the day and obviously a thought about what Drew Brees just had to say here in just a moment. But again, the Saints lose to the Buccaneers 48-40. Meanwhile, in Cleveland, Steelers and Browns tied at 21 with 1:36 to go in overtime. Cleveland is here next Sunday. All right, John DeShazier, one more time for the Mercedes-Benz Superdome. Final thoughts from him after this Week 1 game. John?
Well, Kel, now you've heard from Coach Payton. You heard from also Drew Brees. And, again, both of those guys kind of echoing the same things. A lot of improvement needs to be made with this team here as it moves into Week 2. However, there are a lot of good things to take away from this game. I mean, obviously, when you're talking about the production that the Saints got offensively, you can't overlook that. A fantastic day from Drew Brees and his receivers and what they were able to accomplish. But they did not run the ball particularly well. Now, we said in pregame that they might not run it particularly well, particularly, I guess, especially if you don't have Mark Ingram. However, even Drew Brees says, look, some of those short passes kind of substitute for your run game. So from that standpoint, running from not a great total or not a great average didn't really affect them that much offensively. The woes we're going to talk about, I'm sure, the rest of this day and this week leading up to the next game are what happened defensively for the Saints. And when you allow more than 500 yards and when you allow a quarterback to complete 21 to 27 and he throws 4 touchdowns and you don't get a lot of pressure on him and he has 2 100-yard receivers, those are issues that are huge and those are issues that have to be addressed if you're going into the next game because obviously Cleveland's going to look at the game film. They're going to know exactly what happened in this game and they're going to try to pick out some of the same deficiencies that Tampa was able to identify and take advantage of. So those are the areas that have to be shored up. And now it's a matter of, it's a race. As Sean Payton always says, it's a race to improvement. There's a race to how fast you can get better. Okay, now the Saints are on the clock, and the race is how fast can you get better, how fast can you get prepared and get rid of these bad plays and hopefully implement the right kinds of schemes and the right kind of people for next week. Again, something that Coach Payton says that he's pretty comfortable saying is, we've got to look at what we're doing and we've got to look at who we're asking to do it. So does that mean there will be changes defensively? Everything's up in the air when you have this kind of performance defensively because obviously no one can be satisfied with this from Sean Payton, defensive coordinator Dennis Allen, on down the line. No one defensively can be happy with this and no one can feel really good about what happened out there. And obviously, if Coach Payton says there are changes to be made, then, when you have this kind of play, change is merited or, sometimes warranted. So we'll see exactly what that means. But again, this is a team that, hopefully you can take these in one-game segments as they usually try to do. This is one under the bridge. Win or lose, you have to move past it, but certainly a loss like this, you want to wad this one up, get rid of it, get it out of your system, get back to the practice field, get back to the film room, correct those errors that we saw, numerous errors that we saw, and hopefully have a better product on the field for next Sunday's game against Cleveland, because here was an opportunity to start 2-0. That's out the window, Kel. So now, the best they can do is hopefully start 1-1. Split these 2 home games to open the season. They hadn't had 2 home games to open the season in a long time. You don't want to squander both of them. So for the Saints' sake, hopefully they're able to go, fix what's wrong, and then come back and have a better showing on next Sunday against Cleveland, Kel. We'll see exactly how it goes. And again, you and I will be with this team throughout the week, so we'll see what their temperament is and hopefully what their improvements are during practice this week, Kel.
All right, JD, thank you very much. You're exactly right. It'll be a busy week, obviously, at the practice facility, and a little uneasy, too. John Ashazier, thanks again for all his work today. More coming from him later today on NewOrleansSaints.com. Speaking of the last time that the Saints opened the season with 2 home games, I want to say it was 2004. I could be off on that, but I think that's what I remember most from a conversation during training camp about that. Speaking of 2004, today was the first time that you've had 50-plus points scored in the first half of a game, which we had today in this shootout for the first time since 2004 as well. All right, less than a minute left at Cleveland. The Browns, who did not win a game all of last year, we all know that, still tied with the Steelers, 21-21. The Browns are here next weekend. The blowout today was in Baltimore. The Ravens blasted the Bills 47-3. In fact, Nate Peterman, their starting quarterback, lifted in that ball game. Buffalo got Josh Allen in to make his NFL debut. The Saints earlier today scored on a play where they sent Drew Brees out wide left and brought Taysom Hill to run a quarterback, and on an option found Alvin Kamara for the first Saints score of the day. New Orleans, though, not the only team running a play today with 2 quarterbacks in the set. The Ravens also did so in their big win today. Early first half action, Lamar Jackson came in at quarterback, and Joe Flacco stayed on the field. Flacco, by the way, had a big day today, at least 3 touchdown passes in that football game. The other division team that we haven't talked about, the Carolina Panthers, are just now underway. They were delayed a bit by weather earlier today in Charlotte, but they are now underway against the Cowboys at home. As we know, the Falcons lost on Thursday night in the season opener for everyone. And so that would then give you a look at the NFC South here in Week 1. Unfortunately, not only the Saints 0-1 overall, but 0-1 in the division as well, as they fall to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers today by the final score of 48-40. Big thanks to Caroline Gonzalez today, Ashley Amos, also, of course, our producer Brendan Hassett in putting today's Saints postgame show together. Wish we had a happier one for you here in Week 1. We'll do this all over again next week, obviously. Following what we hope is a Saints win over the Cleveland Browns. And we'll keep an eye on a couple of storylines throughout the week. We've got to see if the Saints come up with a 3rd, 4th wide receiver situation. Traquan Smith, the rookie who had such a big training camp, made a big splash during the preseason, did not have a catch today. Michael Thomas basically carried the load. Ted Ginn Jr. did have 5 catches. And Benjamin Watson, the tight end, but it's just, he might be the first that will ever defeat Father Time, but Benjamin Watson with 4 receptions today, 3 of which came on one particular drive. I want to say that was in the 4th quarter today. But again, the comeback not enough. No pressure on the quarterback today, and Ryan Fitzpatrick was the star as he and Deshaun Jackson and Mike Evans just absolutely went wild and torched the Saints pretty good in a big win for the Buccaneers, who are coming off of a losing campaign, and this goes a long way in building confidence for them. And then we'll see if they have a quarterback controversy in a couple of weeks when Jameis Winston is eligible to come back. Ryan Fitzpatrick, though, and the Buccaneers move on with a win today, though, on the road. The Saints fall to, as we mentioned, 0-1. Final score again today, Tampa Bay 48 and the New Orleans Saints 40. I'm Sean Kelly. Have yourselves a great rest of a Sunday. Enjoy the remaining football, including 2 games tomorrow night, a double dip for Monday Night Football, and then we'll see you next weekend, of course, with the Saints and the Cleveland Browns. Until then, good night.
Into the